YouTube. Thank you for joining. This is On the Wheel and I am Elissa. Thank you for clicking in. If you like this video, please hit the thumbs up. If you would like to subscribe, please hit the bell notification so you can be aware of when I upload new videos. My channel is just to really just spread awareness on how I am a mother who is raising a child with autism. And the videos that I share on YouTube are just videos on my life being a mom, raising a child with autism, and just my family as a general in whole. And so hopefully these videos help you. Hopefully you find them entertaining. Hopefully you find them educational. And I'm just gonna get right on into it. Okay, so the first part of the video that I created was just a video on how I was very watchful of my child when my son was about 15 months, and how recognizing the early signs that I was aware of and how I got him the necessary help that he needed. I'll put that link in the description so that way if you would like to see that video on how to recognize the early signs of autism, I'll do that. Also, the second part of the video that I did was preparing my child for kindergarten, and just all the things that I was not aware of that I needed to do, all the steps that I needed to do, and the things that I've learned along the way, you know, like creating an IEP and, you know, going to conferences, creating routines and things like that. So I'll put that link also in the description box. This video is more or less on just preparing your child for 4th through 6th grade and how there is a big switch. And that switch is just kind of like how you go from kindergarten, you know, fun little videos and they're fun and they're entertaining, to now 4th through 6th grade, the curriculum changes. And with that change, there comes some hard work. It's a little harder than just K through 3. And I will say that it was a little difficult with that switch as a parent, because then that meant that my routines and things that I had in place needed to be adjusted. And that meant I needed to readjust him as well. And sometimes if you have a child that has autism, or if you know someone with autism, getting them out of their routine can be hard, especially if that's what they're used to doing for so long, and then now you're getting ready to change it, and that can be frustrating for them and for you as the parent. So I'm just gonna say that. So for me, preparing my child for 4th through 6th grade, one of the things that I was always one of the things I was always, what word would I use, proactive about was trying to get information about the upcoming grade, the previous grade before. So what I mean is, at the end of 3rd grade, I would try to get information on what teacher did they think my child was going to have, and what kind of teacher was that teacher, what was her teaching style, what were some of the things that she does. And also, I was one of those parents where at the end of 3rd grade, I was also asking the old 3rd grade teacher, just, you know, like, what are some things that I can work on him with in the summer to prepare him better for the fall, for the upcoming grade. And that's something I was in a habit of doing with each grade he graduated from. I would ask that teacher how to prepare him for the next grade. And for me, that helped, because with my son, just springing it on him, it takes him a minute to sometimes get some of the work. It takes him because for him, it's about the comprehension. It's about the understanding how to. It's understanding the whys. And so if I get a head start on it now in the summer, then that would help him as far as when it came time to present the work to him in 4th grade, it would not be something new. Another thing I would say that helped me was also, I mentioned before in the other video, was going to the conferences. A lot of times in the beginning of the school year, I would try to meet that teacher outside of conferences. I might try to email, I might try to contact that teacher in some way. I'm just say, hey, I just want to introduce myself. I'm such and such mom, and what can I do to help him? Or what do you see after a couple of weeks of him being in school? What do you see his weak areas, or what do you feel like I need to work on him with? Just to kind of make sure that we're on target with the classes and with the work. I will say that it wasn't always easy because fourth grade was a lot. The work was difficult. The work was more difficult as far as math. That took a turn because now we were being introduced to things like adding with multiple numbers or decimals or order of operations, which meant you had to do things in a certain way. And for my son, that was very hard because once he learns it a certain way, that's how he learns it. And now if you say flip it, oh, now you have to move this decimal, or now you have to move this, or when it comes to order of operations, it would be more or less like do this step first, then do this step, then do that step. And if you know anyone with autism or anyone that has ADHD, they struggle when it comes to multiple steps, multiple actions. And so a lot of times when I give him certain commands, I can't give him multiple commands because he's not going to remember all of that all at once. And so I have to kind of break it down and give it to him in segments. But with order of operations, it's like you have to do things in a certain pattern. And so teaching him that was a little difficult because he would do one part right, he would get the math right, but it wasn't in the right order. And so that was difficult, trying to get him to understand that science was difficult because science, for someone who is very literal, science is not very literal. Science is very abstract. And for someone with autism, abstract is not your word that people use to describe you. People usually use the word literal. You see it how it is. You take it how it is. And with science, it's all about hypothesis, and it's all about complex ideas, and it's all about, things that are not visible to the eye. And so sometimes trying to understand that, it was a little difficult. I will say things that we use to help were just maybe like YouTube. We use a lot of YouTube. We use a lot of programs online. I would just try to Google different free science programs to help with teens struggling in science, or things like this. And I used YouTube. I used a program called ABC. It's free. I know they have one called ABC Mouse, but that wasn't the one. We used one called ABC, and that was free up until, I want to say, 6th grade. And then we also used, IXL. That was great because it did math, science, and it did other language. And it would, when you do the problems, it would show you what you did wrong and show you the correct steps. So that was great. Another thing that he struggled with, and this was the big one, was language arts. And why did he struggle with language arts? It was because language arts deals with a lot of imaginative wording. Sometimes, if it's not a research paper, then it's pretty much you coming up with an idea and basing your story based off of that idea, or your thesis. So it's just kind of like, for someone that it's hard for him to explain things. For instance, when my son talks, a lot of times his wording is mixed up. And so you have to know how to piece out certain wording and put it together for yourself. I'll give you an example. I can have him watch a movie, and if I ask him questions about that movie, a lot of times he'll tell me the end first, and he'll tell me the first in the middle of a sentence, or everything will be all jumbled up, and he may get it right, but it's all jumbled up. And so one of those things where, how you do those papers where it say put things in order, a lot of times that is helpful. But when it comes to language arts, and they tell you, hey, I need you to write a paragraph on dogs, he'll just be real to the point. I like dogs. It's like, no, I need more sentences. What about the dogs do you like? And so for him, that was difficult, being more expressive, writing more expressive words. That was difficult because for him, he was like, I like dogs. Like, what more do you want me to say? You know? So that was a little difficult. And just the vocabulary started to get a little intense, you know, learning longer words, trying to understand how to put these words in a sentence, trying to understand the context clues of things. You see a certain word, what does it mean? You think it means that, but in this sentence it really means this. That began to be a little difficult. And so again, iExcel is a great tool. YouTube is a great tool, but also what I learned to have to do was go to conferences. You know, that's one of the things that I definitely feel like really helps me with my son is speaking to the teacher. And the reason why is because a lot of times we as parents, we base things off of how we learned, and we try to use the same wording that we use in school. And most people are like, well, I don't know why they just say this? Why didn't they just say this? And why did they just do this? And like, it's like the way they do things now to us, we feel like it's backwards. But because that's how the kids learn, they know those words that the teacher uses in the classroom. And so if I'm at home and I say certain words to him, he thinks it's wrong, even though it may be saying the same thing, but he thinks it's wrong because I'm not using the same words. And so it's important to use the same words that the teacher is using so you can help him better with his work. And so that way he understands that when he goes home, he's getting the same language that when he's getting at school, and it's not confusing him. Because that's what you don't want. You don't want to use your language, and then when he gets to school, he has to learn a different language. You want to be on the same page as the teacher. So when I would go to the conferences, I would ask, you know, hey, he's doing math, and what are you using? And so she would tell me like, oh, okay, well, when we do this, we say decompose. Or when we do this, we're saying graphs instead of this word. Or when we're doing this, we're saying regroup instead of this word. So I would have to learn how to say those words instead of what I would just say, like, just bunch them all together, you know? No, I have to use the word regroup or decompose, or, you know, things like that. And so for me, it would be like, but why y'all making it so much harder when it doesn't have to be this way? But because that's the way they're teaching him, that's the way he learns. And I don't want to confuse him, so I have to be respectful to how the teacher is doing it. And I don't want him to feel like he has to learn two different ways. So that's definitely a no. I will say another setback that happened 4th through 6th is introducing more of like the Chromebooks. That was a little difficult for my son. Maybe now things are a little bit better, but I will say for someone who struggles with multiple steps, introducing the Chromebook set me back a good 2 months. And the reason why is because when your child is used to just being in a classroom with a teacher and books or paperwork, and then all of a sudden you introduce them into a Chromebook, it's like, well, what is this? You know, and for me, I'm not that tech savvy either. So it's kind of like now I have to learn, and now he's got to learn, and we both got to learn together. Oh, it's going to be a hot mess. So it's just kind of like learning the Chromebook was a little difficult because it included multiple steps. And so it also was trying to teach my son to self-advocate. And that was something that he was not used to doing in kindergarten through 3rd grade. He didn't have to self-advocate. You know, he would just, you know, raise his hand, or the teacher would see him struggling. But now with 4th through 6th, it was a lot more independent work. And they were trying to get the kids prepared so that way when they, you know, graduate, you're going to middle school, high school. Kids are doing their work on their own. You know, you have to be able to email your teachers. You have to be able to look up your grades, you know. So these were things put into place that he had to learn. These were all new things, and that was new for me because with my daughters, I didn't really have to sit down with them and do it. They pretty much did it on their own, you know. But with a son who is on the autism spectrum, it's different because I have to sit down. I have to go over with him because I have to make sure he's clicking on the right thing. I have to make sure he's dropping the homework in the right box. I have to make sure there's no missing assignments. I have to see all of that. So it's a lot of work for me too. And that can be a little difficult, especially for a single mom or just for a mom period who has a busy day and you have other children or you have other responsibilities. It can get overwhelming. And so I will say, pace yourself. Don't get overwhelmed. Just pace yourself and try to find a time in the day where you and your child can sit and just kind of play around with the online classrooms or the online grading process. And that way, when it comes time for your child to do it on his own or her own, they can move a lot smoother, and then they'll get to the point where they can be independent. I will say for 4th through 6th grade, because the workload was more intense, I had to learn how to create certain incentives that would motivate him to shoot for a better grade, because sometimes he would get so discouraged and so upset with not understanding certain things that he would just give up. He would just shut down. And a lot of times when he shuts down, he doesn't want to do anything, and trying to motivate him frustrates me. So the goal is to put more incentives in place. I did mention that with kindergarten through 3rd grade is to try incentives, but more so with 4th through 6th. Some of the incentives that I gave him were, you know, if I saw that he got a B and I knew he worked hard for that B and wow, that was a great job, you might get an extra hour playing on the PlayStation, or you might get more time to stay up on the weekend, or you might get more time to stay up during the week, or you might get to watch a certain show that you've been wanting to watch, or you might get to go to the movie or go to the gaming place, you know. So it's just different incentives. You know your child, you know what your child likes, and so I would say put those things into place. I did at first try to do like, oh, when I see a report card, blah, 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 blah. Wait, great job. You're going to get this much for A. I kind of stopped getting into that because I didn't want my kids to be like, I get paid every time I get good grades. No, you're supposed to get good grades. So I'm not paying you to get good grades. That's what you're supposed to do. But I am going to give you incentives for doing a great job. And so, and I want you to keep that up. So that's just me. That's just my parenting style. I don't pay for grades, but I do encourage good grades. So I will reward you for, you know, certain things, but maybe not monetary, but you know, but I will say that a lot of times with my son, he did really, really well. And I had to put away that whole, oh my God, you got a C, because sometimes getting a C was the best he could do. And you know what? I took that C. And there were times when I knew he was struggling and he got a D. And those were times when I had to tell him how to advocate for himself, how to ask for help, how to come home and do the extra work that he needed to do to get the better grade. And so there were some things that we needed to learn how to do. A lot of it was self-advocating. A lot of it was just, you know how they say if you spend an hour in a class at school, then go home and spend another hour at home, you know, whatever that hour is or whatever, match it up with home. So doing things at home, even when he didn't have homework, still giving him something to do to kind of help put that ingrained in him helped. And those online tools like YouTube, finding those things really, really helped, because sometimes I could not explain it in the way that the teacher could explain it, but I can find a video and they would use similar wording or the same wording, and that would help. It was just more or less just trying to find a video that would break it down in a good enough way to where, just breaking it down in a good enough way to where he understood. And a lot of times, that was the difficult part. Like, I can find the videos online, I can find the videos talking about a certain subject, but it was trying to find someone that broke it down in an easy to understand way for him. And so a lot of times that was the difficult part. And so that's why I would go into things like ABC, because it would be fun, interactive games versus just wording of just reading or listening to someone talk. You could actually interact with the games. A lot of times, like right now, he uses a lot of Quizlet. A lot of times he uses a lot of like Quizlet. And so Quizlet is a nice way for him to learn and incorporate the interactive. So that was nice too. And so I will say that teaching him, helping him in 4th through 6th has been a great experience. Unfortunately with him, he went through that period with his 4th through 6th that he had to experience COVID. And COVID really flipped things around for us while he was in 5th grade. So in 5th grade, his social skills were attacked. And that's another thing with 4th through 6th grade, I would say, is the social aspect. Okay, so another thing that you want to be mindful of is the shift in social interaction. So when my child was in kindergarten through 3rd grade, it seemed real easy for him to just be playful with everyone, to laugh with everyone, to get along with everyone. But then there was that switch where in 4th through 6th grade, friends were few. And it seemed like bullying was becoming more prevalent because my child was innocent in his thinking, and because he was a very literal thinker. A lot of times people would say things to him and he would take their word for it, even though they were lying. Or they could say things to him and the innocence and the naiveness of it was believing in what they said. And that was the part that was hard for me as a mother, is to deal with my child being bullied or my child being picked on because of his differences, or because he doesn't understand something, or because he's one of the kids that has to leave out to go into the small groups, or because he talks different, or because he's very quiet and keeps to himself. So I will say, as a mother, 4th through 6th grade was hard, because that's one of the things you want for your child. You want your child to be social. You want your child to make a lot of friends and have sleepovers and parties and be invited to do this and that. And for my son, that just wasn't the case, because he was very quiet. And the school that he was in, unfortunately, was not a school full of good kids, I'll say that. It was a school full of kids that had a lot of behavior problems. And because of that, my son stayed away from them. And he understood, no, they do a lot of things that get them in trouble, and I don't want to get in trouble. That was one thing my son did not want to do, was get in trouble. He didn't want to get his name on the board. He didn't want to get no time taken away. He didn't want to get no privileges taken away. And because he chose to be the good boy, that made him stand out. And that made him get picked on. And people would laugh at him. And that would be difficult for a mother with a child with autism, or just even if you have a child that doesn't have autism, just knowing that your child is being bullied makes you want to go in there and knock every kid out, but you can't. Instead, you have to do it the right way, and that's going through the chain of command. And like, okay, well, let me talk to the teacher, or let me see what's going on, or let me ask you some questions. And his innocence is so innocent that he would not even know at times that he was being bullied. And so there were plenty of times that he would tell me certain things, and when I'm listening to him, retell the story, I'm like, now wait a minute, what happened? That's not right. No, that should not be. What the heck? And so unfortunately, my son had encountered many moments of being bullied. And as a mother, that's really, really hard. It was really, really hard because, every child has their own story that they have to have. And you don't want your child to go through difficulties just because of who they are. But that's the world we live in, right? We live in a world where people pick on you when you're different. People pick on you and make fun of you if you don't say what they think you should say, if you don't dress a certain way, if you don't talk a certain way. People pick on you and they bully you. And that's just what they do. And so for my son, my job as a mother was to help build him up emotionally and mentally, and to just reiterate and affirm him in who he was. And that's something you're going to have to do, is learn to affirm your children, learn to affirm your child, because this world is mean and cruel. And yes, there are some nice people out there, but kids, they're kids, and they will do what kids do. And even if they get told not to do it, they still do it. We all know that. And so going through 4th through 6th grade was difficult on the social aspect, because that's where people started noticing which child acts like this, which child is different, which child is, cool, and which child is not cool. And so I will say, just be watchful of your child, be active in their learning, be caring and kind, and be sensitive to their needs. And just remember that when you went to school, it's not the same way as when your child goes to school. And when a child has autism, the world in school is even more different. It's just a different perspective on how they look at things, how they understand things. And you have to be sensitive to their needs and be mindful of the changes that are happening in the classroom. Be mindful of how your child is doing academically. Be mindful and aware of how your child is doing socially. Ask them questions about the playground. Ask them questions about in the classroom and the people that they talk to. Ask them questions and get down to the bottom of things, because you might be the parent that can help bring change. You might be the parent that can help bring awareness. And so the goal is to make sure your child passes, but not just pass the grade, but is growing and emotionally, physically, and you want that child to be fit and well balanced in all areas. And so I would say that 4th through 6th is really just staying on task with a lot of your work, going to your IEP meetings, going, making sure your 504 plans are up to date and everything, and just making sure you're keeping in contact with your teachers. And if your child is seeing any other therapists, to make sure you're kind of staying in contact with them, and just being mindful of the social changes that happen in 4th to 6th grade, and try to update yourself on the technology, the new technology that's out there, and try to at least understand how to navigate the different programs that are out there for my child. There's a lot of them, but kids like tech stuff, so maybe it's just the parents that have to learn it. But for my son, sometimes it takes a couple of months to learn something, and those couple of months of learning something can set him back, because he's too busy learning this when he should be doing this in the classroom. And so trying to learn two things at once can sometimes be difficult, but I will say it's not impossible, because my child is now in the 7th grade. So he passed his 4th through 6th grade years, and we had a lot of moments of ups and downs, but we did it, and you can do it too. And I wish you all the luck, and stay tuned for more videos being uploaded in the future. And thank you for watching. Much love.